Right, this week, the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, or OUTA, announced that it has laid charges of corruption and financial misconduct against Eskom's suspended Chief Financial Officer, Anoj Singh. This is not the only case laid by OUTA. The 5-year-old civil action group fighting corruption has been hard at work laying charges of high treason, extortion, corruption against those allegedly implicated. The organisation has been accused of going after the government but overlooking cases that involve white monopoly capital. In studio with me, Wayne Duvernay, he's the chair of OUTA, and he's here to talk about a couple of these issues. Good to have you, Wayne. Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Nice to be there.
There's a lot to get through, so we'll start off with what's happening with Anoj Singh. What's the latest on this?
Well, there's so much, and you know, he came out of we followed Brian Molefe from, I think it was Transnet, yes, initially, became the CFO at Eskom, and all the allegations are very clear. You've seen them come out in the Gupta leaks, and recently in the Jeff Budlinder case where Tokyo Sequali was part of the group. And what has clearly been exposed is that Anoj Singh has been the conduit through which a lot of payments have been made to Trillion, 400 million now, as it's put down, just over 400 million rand. Some of that unauthorized, it had bypassed a due process, and he has subsequently been suspended. If this matter is allowed to take its course and go through the courts, we believe that Anoj Singh will have to account for his conduct, and he could face jail time.
All right. Well, that's still to be seen. So that's one of the issues you're looking at. I mean, there are just so many. You know, whether we're talking about Eskom, because you have stated that you would like to see a full investigation into Eskom and to Transnet. That you won't stop until that happens.
Not at all. SABC as well. Here at SABC, SAA as well. You know, there's a lot been going on. We've been giving a lot of input to the parliamentary portfolio committees. We've been fighting the e-toll matter, an unjust and irrational tax policy that was introduced 5 years ago. That is ongoing and sadly just continues to become a litigation battle with the public. So on many fronts, we're trying to tackle not only state capture, but general maladministration and waste of taxpayers' money through abuse of authority in state-owned institutions and in government departments.
So is that what you go for? Because, I mean, when you look at some of the individuals that you have gone after, whether it be particularly here at the SABC, Faith Mutambi, Claudia Motswaneng, James Aguma, we've spoken about Anoj Singh, you know, are these what do you look for? What is it that your criteria to look and say, right, this is who we want to go after?
Well, we get a lot of input from whistleblowers, and what we're trying to do is ensure that our tax money is spent properly, that it is not wasted, as we say, through gross maladministration and corrupt activities. And where that is uncovered and where it's very clear, so we saw in the BNP Capital case at SAA, wasted money, unnecessary contracts, and the board at SAA, which we've implicated Dudu Mnyeni, and we've actually raised delinquent director charges against her. You see, we don't just go after people and lay charges. Sometimes we go straight to court, like the Dudu case. In Eskom's case as well, we've laid a complaint at the Competitions Commission because of their abuse of authority. We believe that the transmission and the generation of electricity should be split so that we can allow other energy forms to come in. We're tackling the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, and the MYPD, because the tariffs that are going up at Eskom is just, it's outrageous what is happening, and purely as a result of their gross inefficiencies and the misspending that's taking place there. So it's such a broad front, but it all revolves around taxpayers' money. If we can stop the scourge, we can bring down taxes, and we don't have to have these massive increases each year, and the money can flow through to the poor where it's needed, and that is in schools, housing, medical support, and it's just rife at the moment.
As much as I think a lot of South Africans would agree with what you're investigating and the work that you're doing in fighting corruption and getting the money to and channeling it to where it belongs, a lot of critics out there are saying, but, you know, it's amazing the cases that you do take on, and that the private sector you seem to ignore things that are going on with white monopoly capital. For instance, you know, one instance where the bank scandal came around and banks tampered with the rand, and that was not touched by OUTA. You know, what do you say to critics like that?
Well, we say that the due course must follow. Due process must follow. If they're guilty, they must face the courts. We're dealing with taxpayers' money here.
Why don't you go after them as an organisation, as you are going after government?
Well, we are so constrained, and as I said, our mandate is taxpayers' money through government spending. That's where it is. But we also tackle, we tackle construction companies, the collusion that we are dealing with there, and getting them to be held accountable. We're tackling a case in Pretoria, and there are white companies involved there. Mark Pomensky, we've laid charges against. This is not a race thing, and this is not about trying to protect business. There are two sides to the corruption coin, and believe you me, any organisation and business that is involved in corruption needs to face the music. But we're dealing with government corruption here and taxpayers' money, and we are going to be working a lot closer now with business leadership and other factors and other areas, so that we can get business to start playing their part in tackling tax abuse.
I want to talk about President Jacob Zuma, because I know that you had said recently that you've put together a compelling case.
Yes.
You are waiting, however, for the outcome of the vote of no confidence, which we did see wasn't successful, but there was a very sort of a surprising vote in favour of the vote of no confidence. Where are you with this? What's happening there?
So we filed that a very compelling case document called No Room to Hide to Parliament, so that they could see that this state capture matter was real. It wasn't just based on sensationalism and media releases and so forth. We'd hoped that would have swayed Parliament, members of Parliament, to vote in the right direction, and that vote was quite interesting. Nonetheless, it didn't go all the way. We are now watching the case unfolding that has been laid with the Constitutional Court. I think the EFF have a case there, Helen Suzman Foundation. Our legal advisors and senior counsel are waiting to prepare our case if need be, and it will be a constitutional matter to tackle Jacob Zuma as well. You know that the courts, though, however, have got to be very careful not to usurp the powers of the executive at government. There are clear lines between judiciary and the executive, and it's a very tough space we find ourselves in, because we have a president who's overstepped the mark, who's broken his constitutional the constitutional values of this country. It's been highlighted before, and yet he remains in power as a result of the political forces that keep him there. He is wrong to be the president and the helm of this country. He is doing this country no favors. We're doing a lot of damage, and investment is running away. The poor are getting poorer. And it's just shocking that we find ourselves in this situation. Quite frankly, OUTA shouldn't even exist if we had a country that was run properly.
Initially, we saw OUTA starting because of e-tolls.
Yeah.
I mean, that was your beginning mandate, and now it's gone. I mean, there's even a case which we haven't even touched on, is the Mineral Resources Minister, Mozibenza Zwane. You also laid theft charges against him.
Yes.
What's happening there?
Well, you know, we lay these cases with the police, and we don't just lay flippant cases and small affidavits. These are files with all the evidence. We do the work for the Hawks, for the NPA. Some people accuse us of acting with, you know, this action is really futile because the police don't do anything. The reality is we've got to do this work because we've got to assume that the enforcement processes will take place, if not now, later. So
what's happened? Have you? I mean, the reality is, and I asked this question a bit earlier. It was sometime this week, and I think we were talking about the corruption that's happening, and yet we've never seen anybody being held accountable. We've got all this evidence. You're investigating them. Everybody's investigating. These are going to the courts, and yet nobody's behind bars. There's just no accountability.
Purely because the institutions of the Hawks, the NPA, and now the public protector, they have been captured.
So don't you think what you're doing is a waste of money?
Not at all. No, it's not, because when the lid is lifted off those organizations, when the tide turns, when those organizations or institutions, are free to do the work that they have to do, those charges will flow. What you can't do is go and lay those charges in 2 years' time when there is a change of appetite in those institutions, because then it looks like a witch hunt. Then the whistleblowers have moved on. Then the documents you need to lay those cases are not around. So we have have to follow due process, hoping and fighting for the day that the NPA will do its work, that the Hawks will do its work without fear and without favour, and they will have all the evidence there. Until then, we continue to do our work, but we don't only lay charges. As I said, we have gone to SAICA, laid complaints. The delinquent director case in court against Dudumnian, if she's found guilty, she cannot be a director on boards as well. So it's a multifaceted strategy and approach that we take, and from the charges that we lay and from the cases that we bring to court, we believe that we're doing as best we can to hold these people accountable.
All right, Wayne, thank you so much for talking to us, but it'll be wrong of me, and I ask you this in just a couple of seconds, e-tolls. What's happening? Is it still there? I know that you were saying that with this, there's a new act that's coming through, the amendment bill, there could be a referendum if all things don't go well. Just quickly tell us about this.
Just very briefly, this is a 5-year-old saga now. It's been going on. E-tolls is nearly 4 years old. Less than 20% of people are paying their e-toll bills. It's completely collapsed and failed as a user pays scheme. You need 90% plus all users to pay. It doesn't work when there's 80% paying. We're in court. SANRAL is summonsing the public now, and we're going to defend those summonses. We're entitled to in a defensive challenge. It's sad when government goes to war with society and the public like this. No government, when it gets into this space, wins those wars, but we will be there behind the public. We will fight this matter right the way through to the end.
All right, we leave it there. Wayne Duveneck, thank you for talking to us. Wayne, of course, is from OUTA. He's the chair of the organisation. As you can see, so much to talk about, and there is just so much that OUTA is going after at this point when it comes to current cases of corruption that they've laid so far.